During the 5th century BC, Athens appeared as the most powerful city in the Greek world. However, the Peloponnesian War, which began in 431 BC, ended in a terrible defeat for Athens. Defeated by Sparta, Athens lost its maritime empire and a quarter of its citizens. It then experienced a severe financial crisis and significant political tensions. In ancient Athens, ideas were not hidden in books. They lived in the streets, in public squares, and in every heated conversation. Among the citizens walked Socrates, a strange and unsettling teacher who did not give answers, but asked questions no one could ignore. Athens was a city of debate. Politics, justice, virtue, and truth were argued openly beneath the stone columns of democracy. But Socrates had made powerful enemies. To many Athenians, his questions sounded less like wisdom and more like danger. Victim of the general feeling of pessimism and superstition that followed Athens' defeat in the Peloponnesian War, Socrates suffered from a bad reputation. Young men followed him closely, fascinated by his method. They saw in Socrates a mind that refused easy certainty. Socrates challenged every confident answer. What is courage? What is justice? What is a good life? His calm questions unsettled everyone. Politicians disliked being exposed in public. Socrates could reveal ignorance without raising his voice, and humiliation created resentment. In 399 BC, Athens prepared to judge him. The charge was serious: to fail to recognize the gods recognized by the city, to introduce new deities, to corrupt the young people. Socrates had three accusers: Meletus, Anytus, and Lycon. Meletus was a poet, Anytus was a politician, Lycon belonged to Anytus's circle. They presented Socrates as a threat to tradition, to order, and to the fragile confidence of the city. The jury was made of ordinary citizens. In Athens, justice was not decided by professionals, but by hundreds of voting men. The trial took place in two stages. Initially, 501 jurors were assembled for his judgment. This number was the usual for this type of trial. However, Socrates refused to read a defense speech that had been written for him by Lysias. Instead, he preferred to tell the jurors his life story. He argued that an unexamined life was not worth living. For Socrates, truth mattered more than popularity, safety, or approval. His students watched from the side, anxious and powerless. The man who taught them courage now had to demonstrate it himself. Socrates was found guilty, with 281 votes against him. Once Socrates was found guilty, the question arose of what punishment he should receive. The accusers demanded the death penalty, but the payment of a fine was also an option. Socrates, after expressing his surprise at being condemned by such a small majority, offered to pay 1 mina, 100 drachmas, which was a fifth of his wealth and a testament to his poverty. Finally, he settled on the sum of 30 minas, 3,000 drachmas, guaranteed by Plato and Crito. He also offered to be fed at the Prytaneum as a reward for his services to the city, an immense honor bestowed upon benefactors of the city and victors of the Olympic Games. His attitude eventually exasperated the judges, who perhaps perceived it as arrogance, although Socrates repeatedly insisted throughout his trial that it was simply the truth. According to Plato, he was condemned to death by a margin of 30 votes out of 501. The verdict was death. Socrates heard it without collapse, as if the judgment of others could not touch his inner freedom. His students were devastated. They had believed wisdom might protect him. The method of execution was to be carried out by ingestion of a deadly poison, hemlock. In prison, his friends gathered around him. The public trial was over, but the final lesson had just begun. Socrates' execution was delayed for religious reasons. Imprisoned, he was given the opportunity to escape with the help of his friends. However, he refused to flee his sentence, arguing that upholding the laws of the city was more important than his own life. To him, escaping the law after accepting its protection would betray everything he had taught. The cup was placed on a small table. It was simple, silent, and final, the instrument of Athens' sentence. In the dim light, Socrates spoke one last time. His friends and students listened, knowing they were witnessing the last words of their master. Socrates held the cup calmly. The moment was not heroic because he wanted death, but because he refused to abandon principle. Around him, his students wept. Socrates remained serene, showing that philosophy was not theory but preparation for fear itself. After his death, the silence left behind was not the end of Socrates' voice. Plutarch wrote that after allowing Socrates to be condemned to death, the Athenians blamed themselves and felt hatred for his accusers. His ideas survived in memory, dialogue, and written words. What began in the streets became a foundation of Western philosophy. Through Plato, Socrates would continue to question generations not yet born. Like a small flame in darkness, his method survived. Power could silence a man, but not the search for truth. Socrates became more than a defendant. He became a symbol of conscience, intellectual courage, and loyalty to examine life. Over time, the death of Socrates became a symbol in Western political philosophy. Plato and Xenophon immediately seized upon their master's death as a symbol of the injustice caused by popular ignorance, using it to criticize democracy. This image has enjoyed considerable popularity from Cicero and Marcus Aurelius to Nietzsche. His final legacy is not an answer but a question: what would you risk to live according to truth?